So many choices and I can't find one that I want. Sometimes you just got to modify it and make it work for your needs. That was really good. Well, these are done and ready to go. They're disc brake. That's what I'm looking for, but it still ain't the right one. In the true spirit of hot rodding, if it don't fit, you cut it apart and you just make it work. So we got some brackets that we can put on rear ends that we've cleaned up here, and we can put disc brakes on a regular drum brake rear end. So we've already started that project in here. This is our resident make it work guy, Dan, here.
What you need to start, and this is one of the most important parts on this project, is if we can get a picture mostly of the bracket, how the bracket fits on here. We don't have anything that really goes over this in the instructions. Here's our bracket.
What we got, basically this, we don't manufacture this kit, we just bought this kit. And I've never installed one, have you?
No.
No, and reading the instructions, it basically, the instructions said, figure it out.
Right.
So we're figuring it out. What we've done so far, you can see we've pulled the axles out, we've taken the backing plates off, and we've cleaned the end of this thing. So what we can do now is take this bracket, this had drum brakes, and now it's got disc brakes. And the bracket goes this way, right? You were telling me you could put it either way, and there's a problem if you put it like so?
Right. It comes in like this. As you see,
It's going to hit.
it's going to hit. So it definitely goes like this. The deal is it'll fit just about any way on this, unfortunately. So, you see,
You got the bracket installed there.
It's going to sit on here. Then what you need to do is position it towards the rear of the housing, okay?
Now why do you do that?
For one reason, is because the rotation of the brake, of the rotor, and under braking, we want to pull it. Otherwise, if we go to the front, it's going to want to pull it down. If we pull it here, it gets the best stopping. Plus, it's easier to get to as far as brake lines. We don't want it towards the front of the rear end. We want the brake lines to come down the rear of the rear end. We want it to go into the caliper.
Okay, so it just goes that way.
Right.
There's a geometry explanation for it, but bottom line is it always goes towards the rear.
Towards the rear. That's the easiest thing to say.
20 degrees off center or something. Does it really matter?
Just, no. I mean, basically, as it goes towards the rear, try to go ahead and look at your brake lines, how you want to run your brake lines, as long as it's here. You don't want it down. You want it up a little bit, probably, I don't know, say 20, 30 degrees above dead center.
Now something too, rear disc brakes, it's like ooh, ah. Now I'm looking at pads here, I got a set of used pads. I'm looking at the surface space here on brake shoes versus a set of pads. And these are the pads that will actually go onto the caliper here. It looks like this has got a lot more stopping power than that does.
Your drum brakes always have more stopping power because it actually does have more surface.
So why do you even like disc brakes?
The main reason is because manufacturers went to a disc for one reason, serviceability. They're easier to service. Drum brake has a little less cooling ability, but you can make that up with a better drum. I mean, if you get a fin drum, it's going to cool just as good as the disc. The deal is the disc, much easier to maintain and take care of as far as they're concerned. Plus, it's cheaper to make. What's a drum cost? What the pads, you know? Comes back to cost. Really.
Well, we're not doing it because it's cheaper. Aesthetically, I like it. It's clean. It's easier to take off. Hot rodding is simple. Racing, that's why they've gone with it in racing too, isn't it?
Racing, basically, well, you can't compare this to a racing caliper.
No.
A racing caliper has got 3 pucks, and the pads are massive compared to this. And you've got as much stopping power on a race brake as you do on a brake drum. So you're talking quite a bit of difference. But you're never gonna use these brakes as much as you are on a race car. So
now you told me something interesting that I didn't really realize. You said a drilled rotor is not a good thing.
No, a drilled rotor is not good. The problem with the drilled rotor is once it heats and cools, where the holes are, it'll start cracking in between those holes. And if you don't want to pull that rotor off, say every 3-4 months to make sure it's not cracking, if it does start cracking, it'll come apart on you. Under heavy braking, say if you go in the mountains or you're out having fun. Around here, we have a lot of mountain roads. So yeah, it's very easy. And if you ever look into racing, they sell them out of magazines, and I have no idea why, but the deals in racing, it's basically outlawed. So you're
Now,
not
is there
going to
a
see
way
it
to
drill
take your
cars.
rotor and make it more efficient?
Sure. You go ahead. These are just a flat rotor here. As you can see, nothing in here. They do make a vented rotor that's got vents in it. Okay? That's probably the most logical thing to do.
Now what makes it more efficient is the cooling abilities and...
Actually, what it does is as you hit the brakes, you create a gas and a heat. And what that does, that allows the gas and heat to come out from underneath the pad. That's what actually stops. When the pads get hot and you get brake fade, what usually happens is you get a gas, builds up between the pad and the steel, and it just actually pushes the pad back.
Wow.
So if you can bleed the gas out, then you get a better surface to pad efficiency.
Well, very good. We got a project here. We got to get these brakes on. This is going to go on a C cab we're building, and when it comes with this kit, you get a hat, and the rotor's not even together. You got to bolt this thing together. It's pretty. Don't even fit in there. I don't know what's up with that. Oh, you go. See, you got to pay attention to what you're doing. It goes like this. It doesn't. It doesn't go through. So we bolted this one together already. We fit it to the axle. Now we got to just get the bracket on there so that the caliper's centered on there, I'm supposing.
Yes. Basically what you do is you go ahead and make sure your axle's in, make sure everything's centered, make sure your cap's on, make sure there's no exactly the way it's going to be. You want to go ahead and make sure you put a wheel and stuff on here first and make sure the wheel fits over the rotor and the caliper. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set the caliper on here. Just go ahead and set your rotor, your caliper on the rotor. Go ahead and get it in position where you want it. Go ahead and draw a mark if you want, or if you know exactly right where you want it. You go ahead and center the rotor inside the caliper. Make sure everything's square. And you can go ahead and take your welder, and basically you just go ahead and tack it. And when you tack it, make sure you tack one side, and if you can, you got to tack the other side. Otherwise, what you're going to do, if you don't tack both sides, the heat will pull the bracket to one side, and you'll get a crooked bracket as you end up welding. So this is very important that you tack both sides before you actually start welding. Okay?
I was going to ask you about that. You can see we've welded these brackets on. And it is an issue. I mean, if we weld solid across something, that heat will put an arch into it.
Right, it actually pulls towards that side as it cools. So that's why you definitely need to tack both sides, keep it square, and even when you weld it, you want to just go ahead and start one and weld, and then go ahead and start the other one before the other side actually gets a chance to cool. Because once it starts cooling, that's when it starts pulling.
Well, I'm going to let you go ahead and get it done.
Okay.
So I'll be
Thank
back
you.
and we'll see what it looks like.
Okay, thanks. See ya.